trustworthiness of witness, confession validity, and all of these were reason behind why these people were let go. Why didn't this occur in the early days of investigation? Why did it take 19 years to figure this out? Imagine the pain of the people who were accused, the social stigma associated with the whole fiasco. Their entire life fell apart. 2 decades later, they have nothing to look back to. Even they finished an entire life imprisonment, 14 years, and 5 years more, and they're found to be innocent. What does this tell you about the criminal justice system? That is what you should be looking at. Few days ago, I told you that you have to look at the Odisha map, right? Another advertisement from Odisha. Please have a look. Textile parks. Go to ministry website and see. Okay. At the central level, what is the corresponding ministry? How funds are flowing into Odisha. Observe that. Verdict should wake us up. See, when you're talking about any verdict, it begins with rule of law. Rule of law. Then we have to talk about procedural integrity. These two things, these two principles, coupled with constitutional morality. These two principles, coupled with constitutional morality, should drive our criminal justice system overall. In the absence of procedural integrity, in the absence of rule of law, the very principle, the foundation of the constitution, why it exists, the morality aspect, goes for a toss. And when that happens, the very purpose with which an institution in a democracy exists, for example, for lawmaking, parliament, for adjudicating and protecting the constitution, courts, for getting a job done, the executive, the very existence of those institutions become pointless when these principles are shaken. 19 years later, when you are found that when there is no evidence against you and you're let go, there's nothing that can compensate for the agony and trauma that people must have gone through. Justice delayed is justice denied. So from that standpoint, we are talking about the institutional reforms, meaning how can we reform our institutions to quicken the procedure. For example, when you are talking about terrorism cases, counter-terrorism cases, we have had National Investigation Agency, NIA. Why is it not equipped to investigate the cases quickly? What can we do to make those institutions better? And with what intent? That is the focus of this article. So here, take a look at this and read the summary. It is time that police and special squads created to handle terror crimes were not only well trained in investigation, but also equipped with the latest technology. The problem with the state police, especially when you're dealing with issues like terrorism, is that there is always a awareness lag between the level of technological prowess of terrorists and that of the state police, because they do not get adequate training time and again. So when it comes to investigation and the technological elements that are involved, there is always a lag, and there is a power conflict between the state police as well as the central investigating agencies. Lack of cooperation. They are supposed to cooperate with the central investigation agencies, but this power tussle and the lack of coordination, lack of heartful coordination to resolve the case will often lead to delay in investigation, sometimes even gets derailed. This causes severe injustice to the people. When it comes to organized crime or terror related cases, their fear for their lives is genuine, as our witness protection program is at a very nascent stage. This is the reason police often depend on stock witnesses. One of the crucial point of investigation is the gathering of evidence. This gathering of evidence should abide by Article 20, Clause 2 and Clause 3. You cannot torture an accused person and extract a confession out of them, because we have a right against self-incrimination. Right. And usually third degree torture and confessions are the usual methodology used by the police to extract information or to close a case, which is again against the values of constitutional morality. It's high time that we start recognizing what is wrong with our system and focus on those basic principles of rule of law, procedural integrity with accountability. And also it's time that we build our institutional capacity to handle these investigations, and that is what this article is talking about, especially the last one, NIA. Okay. And since this article is written by an IPS officer, you will get an insight into the practical difficulties and the lack of coordination between the state police and the central agencies, which is a very important point to note. Moving on. Listen to the quote. This is a very, very important article, especially if you have anthro. In Jharkhand, the government is taking away tribal lands in the name of development, and the definition of an ancestral property is under conflict. We have PESA 1996, Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas. If you don't know the basics of PESA, please go back to your basic textbook Lakshmikant and read about this. What are scheduled areas? Why do we need scheduled areas? What is Panchayat system? Why this act came into existence? What problem was existing and what problem was solved through this legislation? Okay. It's not enough to create a law. We also need to enforce it. When you say something is a right, for example, you have right to education. What does it mean? It means that state is giving something as an entitlement. Why is the state giving? Because it's a recognition of something that is inherently there with people. It's a pre-recognized principle that everybody should get education in a democracy. By making that a right, you are only making it explicit. What was already there implicitly, by law, you are making it explicit. Similarly, when you're talking about PESA or any tribal laws, what was hitherto implicit was made explicit. So ancestral property recognition is not a charity from the government. It's the recognition of a pre-existing right. And if you are not respecting that and you are not treating that principle with the existence of this law or the underlying principle of constitutional morality, again here also, that's a problem. And the court has said that we have to recognize these rights, especially in the scheduled areas, and it's mandatory that Gram Sabha intervention, grassroots level democracy should be restored. It cannot be arbitrary extraction of land from the state government. Okay? To understand this article, what are the things that you need to know? Schedule 5, PESA Act, the concept of Gram Panchayat and relevance of Gram Sabha in scheduled areas. Then read this article, it will make more sense. More or less same same points that we're talking about in this article also. The game is on. Designation of the resistance front as a terrorist group. This is a proxy of Lashkar-e-Taiba. Lashkar-e-Taiba is a terrorist organization which is allegedly sponsored by Pakistan. And since this is a banned organization, they started a different organization under a different name called the Resistance Front, which is primarily working in Pakistan occupied Kashmir and also infiltrating into Kashmir region. Most of the terror activities and even the recently occurred incident in Pahalgam were done under the proxy of the Resistance Front. India wants to vocally call out this state-sponsored proxy terrorism of Pakistan and isolate it from the diplomatic immunity that Pakistan gets. Recently, US recognized this as a global terrorist organization. What are the implications for that? When an organization is recognized as such, there will be severe constraints on the fund flow, the support that the organization gets from elsewhere. And diplomatically also, it's a sign that, okay, Pakistan is indeed sponsoring some terror-based or terrorist organizations. And such a recognition will help India isolate Pakistan on multilateral forums. This is the first half of the article. The second half, it's about strategic autonomy and how we set the narrative. See, this is a diplomatic success, definitely, because we have tried for something similar even in the past. That did not happen. But why is it occurring now and what should we do? So this is the time where you should start focusing on strategic autonomy 2.0. What do I mean by this? See, this strategic autonomy is a new term, but it had its connotations and relevance even previously. Right after independence, we started this non-aligned movement where we don't want to get into the clutches of the either sides of the Cold War era, whether USSR or US. After that, after USSR disintegrated, we arrived in a unipolar world where US was dominating, and with the rise of China, a bipolar, and now we have a multipolar world. Meaning there are multiple power centers which can control the global narratives. Even India became one such global center pole. And we are today considered as a balancing power. If we want to contain China, there needs to be the presence of a very significant big player, not the small nations. And that big player will be India. I'll tell you a ground rule in diplomacy and also international relations. There are no permanent friends and enemies in international relations. There are only permanent needs. Okay. In this context, you will have to realize one point. Every country wants to help another country only to the point where it remains inferior than the supporting country. Let's say if someone is helping India They will only do so as long as it serves their needs and as long as India does not become as powerful as the other nation. India has a peculiar advantage. What is that? Because of our shared cultural history and our diaspora, or the overall image that India carries in the world, we do not threaten the existence of any other country. And that's the good credentials that we have. India's growth will not be felt as a source of insecurity for other nations. Maybe other nations like China, which are trying to control this region, might feel so. But we are not a threat to the world. In the absence of an alternative for India, we will have to dominate this scene and cement our position as a balancing power. For that, we need to move beyond the narratives set by the Western media. We should control the narratives. This point is very important for your essay. I told this book by Yuval Noah Harari called The Nexus. I've told this point many times. Even if you don't read it, let's read the summary through the web and attach this article as a part of that understanding, because Nexus talks about narratives. The ability to portray ourselves in a certain light is driven by narratives, and therefore understand this nexus, the importance of narrative and the kind of image that India wants to set to the global south as a leader of the global south, and expound our values like Vasudhaiva Kutumbam. Okay, and that is the takeaway from this article. How to create champions. This is a very important article. If I have to tell that this kind of articles, like which some things that you will miss, which are not so considered not so important, but they are the ones with the highest importance. National Sports Policy 2025 came into existence recently. This article is a critique, or it's like a reminder, taking the case study of Spain. Spanish athlete Carlos Alcaraz, he won Wimbledon recently. It's not about his win, but how he was nurtured by the Spanish government right from the word go, from his early days. There are national committees, subcommittees across the country which scout talent from school level, train them through a hierarchy, district level championships, village level, district level, mandal level, or whatever may be the hierarchy there. There is a strict hierarchy of filtering and nurturing students and talent in sports, which is virtually absent in our country. And sports has a huge impact on national integration. Why is it that we all celebrate cricket? Why is it that we celebrate any sporting event, and why do sports or sports stars become national heroes? It's not just for our country. Take the case of any sport. Brazil had its own heroes. Take the case of Formula One. There was a very legendary driver, Ayrton Senna, who passed away on the ground, on the field in 1994. If you take a look at his story, he was killed in a crash just a few hours later when another driver passed away. He raised some issues and concerns in Formula One. He raised some issues and concerns in Formula One with respect to how the rules are against, the spirit of the game. It's only about making money, and that should not be the case. He raised concerns. Tragically, he passed away. He's considered one of the greatest racers of their time. And when he died, Brazil mourned for 3 days. It's like a national hero died. So many people were emotionally attached, and those who like Formula One will remember his voice against what true sportsmanship should be all about. When another teammate passed away or when he was stuck in an accident, he came to the spot with the medical team in a car, in a safety car, which is against the rules. The Formula One Federation were not happy with what he did, and he was unapologetic about it. How dare someone question me when I'm concerned about the safety of people? And in a similar incident, a few months ago or years ago, he saved one other driver just on time like that. When this person met with a crash, that driver also came in to the spot just to make sure that he could do something about it. This is the collective sportsmanship. He passed away. He could save that driver, but that driver had a regret that he couldn't do anything about this person. Because that person hit the concrete block. Ayrton Senna hit the concrete block at a speed of 300 kilometers per hour. There's no way he could survive. And he was raising a flag. And that crash has forever changed the trajectory of Formula One as a sport, and also the whole spirit of the game and what values it stands for, because of the hero worship that Brazil showed towards Ayrton Senna and the values that he expounded. India doesn't have any lack of talent. It has enough talent. Are we nurturing enough? Are we thinking beyond cricket alone? Do we have a formidable infrastructure that can become a enabling environment for nurturing our sports heroes? And National Sports Policy 2025, I'm expecting a question on that. See, in prelims, you are witnessing sports-based questions because there is a demand for this policy in the last few years. From 2021, why are you witnessing sports questions? This is the reason. Now, this policy requires institutions, governance, laws to take shape. Combine this with the national education policy, where sports become an important point of curriculum along with education. That's when you will see the real transformation and national heroes are born. Okay? This is the most important article for the day. Rest of the things are repetitive. See, these articles are not that important because if you read this article, there is nothing new that you are going to get in this entire issue except maybe this places in news. So at a future point, when I'm taking a session on places in news together for prelims, I will come up with an explainer on this, but let's not waste our time reading the history. If you have time, read it. Otherwise, that's fine. It can be covered some other time. And this article is about the importance of having safety infrastructure and the issue of snake bite. In India, there are a few poisonous snakes. It's called the Big Five, or the most importantly, the king cobra. All scientific name is Naja Naja. So you will see why snake bites are more prevalent in wildlife rescuers and what do they do to prevent themselves. What can be done better? This is not a major article per se. You might briefly come across this point. I mean, very rare that this can be asked at prelims level. But if you have to tag this article somewhere, it can at max at the mains level be an example for how primary healthcare centers should have preventive healthcare, and under that snake bites. This is one angle. And conservation. Under conservation, what should be the safety mechanisms? At max, this can be one line. So I don't want you to spend a lot of time on this and take down notes or anything, but just be aware of snake bite as an issue. Okay? That's all that you need to know. Even this one is a continuously evolving issue. Just note these places in news. That's all. Okay? That's it for the day.